2146, that's your SMS line at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiangi. Welcome to our business economic review this morning. Now, the Kenya Revenue Authority and the Kenya Reinsurance Corporation, Kenyare, are still in a court battle over 1.2 billion shillings tax claim, despite President Uhuru Kenyatta asking government agencies to withdraw all legal suits filed against each other. In a report filed by Business Daily, an annual report by Kenyare shows the taxman continues to follow the case in court, demanding a principal tax claim of 742 million and a further 536 million in interest and penalties. The report indicates that Kenyare has failed to engage in alternative dispute resolution in the dispute that dates back to 2008 to 2012 based on failure to withhold taxes on payments made to non-resident insurance companies and non-resident brokers for producing and underwriting opportunity to their reinsurer. This morning, to help us put some of these conversations into perspective, we are joined by Judge Manga and Odiambra Ramogi. Let me begin with you, George, this morning. Where's the challenge? Let me ask that question like that. In government getting tax from its agencies?
I think Elijah, Kenya Revenue Authority has a mandate to collect taxes from all the citizens of this country.
Yes.
Be they private entities, be they public entities, be they any person. As long as you are earning an income within the territories of this country, then you're obligated to pay your taxes to the government. If you look at the case that Kenyare has with the Kenya Revenue Authority, I think it is a direct case. This is a case where Kenyare failed to deduct what we call withholding tax from parties or from counterparties that it was dealing with. Remember, when a company or when an entity like Kenyare trades with either residents or non-residents, then it has an obligation to deduct withholding tax either on the commissions that it pays to these persons or to interest that it pays to these persons at varied rates depending on residency or non-residency. And that is an obligation that Kenyare has. And when they fail to do that, then the responsibility now falls back to them to ensure that they recover this money from these counterparties. Remember, this is not a tax that Kenyare is paying. This is a tax that Kenyare is deducting on behalf of KRA. So Kenyare is acting as an agent in this scenario. And if they fail to do that, then the responsibility now shifts back to them to pay these taxes. So they cannot, Kenyare cannot come around and say they don't want to pay these taxes. Maybe what I would want to see from them is to say that let us pay the principal taxes, but maybe we request for waivers on penalties and interest that have accrued from 2008 all the way to 2020. But at the end of the day, these are taxes that KRA must collect. KRA has had a bit of challenges with collecting taxes from government entities. Elijah, if I might bring that to your attention.
Yes.
And it begs the question: why would private entities be pushed so much to pay taxes while government entities are not paying taxes, Elijah? That's a question that I think we need to ask as citizens of these countries, because I can bet you that if Kenyare was a private entity, then they would have been pushed so hard to make sure that these payments have paid. I have knowledge of several government entities who are not paying their taxes, even agency taxes as pay as you earn. They are government entities or government organizations that are not remitting these taxes, yet they deduct them from their employees. So I think on this one, Kenya Revenue Authority must put their feet down and ensure that these taxes are collected. They have gone through the dispute dispute resolution process. And I think all the way, KRA has been as won their cases. So I think they should just put their feet down and ensure that these taxes are collected, Elijah. Maybe Kenyare might come and say, let us pay the principal taxes, but waive the penalties and interest. That is my take on that, Elijah.
Oh, pretty much. Ramogi, I want to bring you in, but I want to bring you in on this perspective. I want us to look at the selected performance for Kenyare, and then ask the question as to whether the president did make it very hard for Kenyare when he gave the directive that, well, you can't take yourselves, you can't fight each other in court. Now, let me just have a look at that data this morning on the selected performance for Kenyare. I mean, if you look at it, well, they look like they're doing fine if you just go exactly what we are as of all the way from January to where we are right now in 2020. Fine. So now, let me ask you this question now. So in July, the president made the order for the state agencies not to fight each other in court. Now, I will ask you, what is the legality of this directive? And therefore, what position does KRA find itself in the wake of this directive as well?
Well, good morning, first and foremost. It's been a while since I was here with you, Simba.
Good morning.
First of all, KRA is an independent body established by law. The only thing it owes the presidency is courtesy, and and perhaps the appointment of its directors, or the chair, or the director general, the commissioner general rather. Everything else is independent. They have every right to go to court and, in fact, sue the president and his family should the president fail to pay taxes. They can actually sue the president. And so, at best, this was merely a suggestion. It was an executive suggestion. It has no legal standpoint to the extent that you can say that KRA must follow, or anyone else for that matter, or any other agency that is independent in nature for that matter. And so, yes, as an act of courtesy, KRA can perhaps stop pursuing others, but then, as my brother George has put it, they can opt to put their feet down on other of these cases, and they have opted for that in this case. But you'll understand this, that the president does not have targets in terms of revenue collection. KRA does. At the end of the year, the president will ask KRA, why are you not collecting taxes and you need money for the projects, the big 4 projects that I have told the nation I need to deliver on? And so KRA knows that while this is a political statement, at the end of the day, the same man will still hold them accountable to deliver on the targets that have been laid down. And we are at a point where we need every penny that can come in terms of taxes. Because the economy is not performing well. We are in the midst of a crisis. We need to spend money to bring the economy back to its feet. We need to spend money to ensure that the health needs of the country are met. And so you cannot afford to have a nonchalant attitude towards 1.5 billion. Come on. And so on this, I'm with the KRA all the way.
Pretty much. George, let me bring you in on that as well, therefore. Well, the president seems to think, good. I mean, if you're a state agency, you can't take each other to court. Go and find an alternative way of solving these issues. Do you think that complicates KRA's mandate? And should we challenge that directive from the president from a legal standpoint?
Yeah. Elijah, you froze, but
let me just phrase that question again to you, George. Good, thanks. Well, you stand with KRA. George, you also stand with KRA. But then, if Kenyare doesn't want to go through the alternative dispute resolution mechanism that has been already established within KRA, then where should KRA go? It's pretty much to court. But the president doesn't want that. So my question for you this morning is that, well, should somebody therefore challenge the president's directive in court legally? Does it not therefore become illegal for the president to give such a directive, which makes companies like Kenyare such bullish when they're approaching tax matters?
Elijah, I would want to pick from where Ramogi has left.
Yes.
And Ramogi said that what the president has put across is a mere executive advisory or executive ideas, or what we call the advisory, so to speak, to government agencies. And when he talks about government agencies, what is referring to is that in dispute resolutions between government agencies, they should try alternative dispute resolutions before going to court. That doesn't prevent an agency from taking the other to court once they have exhausted the alternative dispute resolutions. Remember, this case had gone to the tax tribunal, and they didn't come to an agreement, and that is why it ended up in the courts of the courts of law. I think KRA is in a very precarious position here. Remember, they have targets, just as Ramogi has put it. And those targets have a bearing even on the functioning of government. If KRA cannot meet their month-on-month target in terms of revenue collections, then you'll see an immediate effect on government operations. I think you remember the last few weeks, the county governments have been complaining about disbursements to the counties. And what I can tell you is that Treasury might want to disburse these funds to the counties, but maybe the availability of those funds is what is preventing them from making those disbursements as fast as they would want to do it. So if KRA doesn't collect their taxes, then it will have an immediate impact on government operations the following day, and therefore KRA must collect its taxes on a day-to-day basis. I was talking to you about government agencies not respecting the obligations to remit their taxes, leave alone even corporation tax, but even agency taxes. I have a very big issue with employer today was to deduct pay as you earn from your payslip, and your payslip shows that they've deducted that amount of money from you, yes, but they don't remit it to the taxman. Then that's a big. In fact, that is an economic crime. That is a tax evasion, so to speak. And therefore, you cannot turn around and say that because I did not remit these taxes, therefore we should look for alternative dispute resolution, not for me not to pay. At the end of the day, Elijah, these taxes must be paid. If you look at the more developed economies like the US, like the UK, taxes are taken very seriously, and it doesn't matter your level or your position in society. If you don't pay your taxes, then you are dragged to court and you're made to pay those taxes, because it has a bearing on delivery of services by the government. If government was today not able to get its money to run its operation, then you'll find so many things grinding to a halt almost on an immediate basis. So for me, I think Kenyare is, if you look at their financials over the last 1 or 2 years, they're doing pretty well, and I believe this is something that they should pay. The omission was on them. Remember, Elijah, the law states clearly that before I pay a commission to a counterparty, I need to withhold either 5% for residents or 15% for non-resident. If you don't do that, and that is what the law says, then the obligation now shifts back to you as the agent of KRA to make sure that money is paid. It applies the same to value added tax. If you go to your local grocery and make some purchases, and the grocery doesn't deduct the value added tax and pays to KRA, the obligation is on them to make sure that money is paid to the taxman. So I think on this, Kenyare is just trying to drag their feet, but at the end of the day, these are tax that they're obligated to pay to the taxman. As I put it earlier, maybe their only argument would be that they be allowed to pay the principal taxes of around 700 million and be allowed to waive the interest and the penalties. That is understandable, but not paying the entire tax in its entirety. I think that is not right, Elijah.
Pretty much, gentlemen. Let's move on to the next issue that we have this morning. Well, the Finance Act 2020 has taken away exemptions on electricity plants and introduced new ones, which now exposes Kenyare to more taxation, which will run into hundreds of millions of shillings for the energy provider. Now, the energy firm, which has been paying taxes and later claiming refunds due to the exemptions, will now stare at reduced income as it comes to terms with the new requirement in the Finance Act 2020. Kenyare CEO Rebecca Miano, in her annual report, noted that this new adjustment of the law would have adverse effects on the company. Now, the report read stringent requirements on the treatment and recognition of input VAT, withdrawal of VAT exemption, which was previously applicable on some of the company's inputs for wind and solar projects, and withdrawal of the exemptions of import declaration feed and railway development levy, which were previously applicable to goods imported for geothermal projects. Now, the period under review saw Kenyare hold 88.9 billion worth of pending power plants, which shall now be exposed to relevant taxes on the projects levied at the rate of between 1.5% and 2% of the value of imported goods, depending on whether they are raw materials or finished products. Ramogi, is this new law in the Finance Act 2020 just geared toward giving KRA an upper hand in collections? Because as it stands, is this not going to affect Kenyare, which has not been paying these taxes? It also exposes Kenya Power as well.
Well, first of all, I think as a matter of clarity, the new law mostly covers imports of geothermal inputs.
Yes.
This does not apply to the already established plants, but rather to the plants that they are developing.
Yes.
And so that might not affect their incomes in 2019 or their incomes before this law comes into force.
Yes.
That means that I do not expect that Kenyare as a company will report lower incomes significantly, but it might affect the new plants.
Yes.
So with that clarity in mind, I think it's not that the tax measure is not punitive, but then again, you'll appreciate that the taxman is also struggling in terms of ensuring that the cash flow problems that are in government today are addressed. And the best way to do this is to ensure that anybody or any organization that has the capacity to pay taxes should do so. I do not, I'm not against the taxes that are levied towards Kenyare. They were waived last year to promote or to encourage green energy production.
Pretty much, but Ramogi, is that not, just sorry for me cutting you as you are making that statement, but is that not where the conversation begins? Because then you have to go and ask yourself, why did we introduce these tax exemptions for electricity companies, for energy companies in the economy? It is to spark that investment. Now, don't you think now, after this, that before somebody comes in for green energy and all that, they'll be thinking twice?
I mean, I will be crucified for saying this, but green energy is a civil society idea. In terms of the capitalists that are actually investing, it's more of an inconvenience. But from an economic point of view, yes, in the long term, green energy is awesome. In the interim, however, it can be quite expensive. Do you know that it is more expensive to produce the green cars, so to speak, than it is to produce the normal car? And it is more expensive not only in terms of costs, but in terms of the costs to the environment.
Yes.
And so the issue around green energy is more of a feel-good issue. That on a good day when the economy is doing well, I mean, let's help the country to build its green energy capacity. On a day when we're in the midst of a crisis and we need money, come on, let's put that aside for a moment let's ensure that at least we are able to meet the needs of the country first. And
Yes.
so for that reason, man, let Kenyan just pay. It's a very small amount because it's not eating into their current pie. It's only going to eat into their future pie.
Ramogi? Because when you talk about a rate of 1.5 or 2%, and they have 89 plants that are still under development, don't you think that that is a big chunk to pay, really?
It is a big chunk. But you see, the point I'm trying to make is it's not yet in the books.
But it's going to be in the books once it comes to effect.
It's going to be in the books, but it's not yet in the books. I'd be worried if we tell you, I mean, come on, you've not entered the house and you're being told that, so now if you enter the house, you will pay an extra rent from what you're paying now. I would be concerned if we ask them to pay more rent on the house they are staying now. And so it's something that it still can be planned within the new developments.
But I want to bring in George on this as well, so we see whether he shares the same sentiment as you do this morning. Now, George, I want us to look at the financials for Kenyan this morning and just sort of look at the selected performance of what it has been in 2020. You could just really give us that data now, Richie. Fantastic. There it is. I mean, it doesn't, when you start looking at issues like even quick ratio, that 1.51, and total debt to equity, that's 68.15%, and free cash flow, which now stands in the 4 billion, and net interest coverage, which is at 5.03%, and payout ratio is at 13.82%. But for me, I'll be looking at the total, the quick ratio, all right, and the free cash flow. It looks as if things are fine because we're talking about 1.5, then not so bad. And if you look at the total debt to equity as well, fine. So the question is going to be, if this is a company that has been hitting these figures because they've been paying and then getting that tax refund, do you think that that ratio is going to be significantly affected once they start paying this rate of 2% and 1.5%?
Elijah, if you look at the performance of Kenyan, right from the time it went public or the time it got its IPO, Kenyan has been a very stable company all the way through. Their key metrics are very good. The reason is, one, they came into the market when there was a huge demand for energy, and two, they were given very heavy tax breaks as they were coming into the market, and one of them was the VAT exemptions. I want to mention that VAT exemptions is a prerogative of the Minister for Finance or of Treasury, and by extension, Kenya Revenue Authority. It is, I want to call it a privilege that is given to companies to align them to a government policy or to a government blueprint. But that doesn't mean that it is something that you're going to have forever. So if I'm in Treasury, if I'm in the finance planning division of any company, then if I have such exemptions, if I have such tax breaks, then I would do my projections with an assumption that that exemption can be pulled away at any time, the way it has now been done for Kenyan. Remember, for a long time, government has been trying to push the narrative or the policy that we want to have enough energy supply so that we can show up manufacturing in our economy, which is a good thing, and it has worked pretty well. Remember, we don't have a lot of energy breaks of late, so it is a good thing. But I think it has reached a point where now the government has thought it wise to pull out some of these tax breaks to these companies so that they can improve their cash collections. I think this has not come at a worst time. Remember, the government gave a lot of tax breaks in ESP1 and ESP2. That is on corporation tax, on pay as you earn, and even on value-added tax. And in the last 2 quarters, you've realized that those tax heads or those vote heads have gone down in terms of collections. So I think the government is coming into this space to try and show up revenue collections for KRA. And they're looking at the soft spots, Elijah. and Kenyan seems like a soft spot for them because it is very easy to collect this tax. When you import, then you pay that. These are taxes that are paid upfront, so it is very easy to collect. I'm sure that maybe in future, probably in 21 or only 2022, they might be given these exemptions again. But for now, as it is, they have to pay this these taxes. That has a ripple effect, Elijah, that you'll find that your cost of power might go high by maybe 5, 6, or 7%. Yes. That is on the flip side. And what does that imply? It implies that maybe the cost of manufacturing will go much higher, because remember, energy feeds into manufacturing quite heavily. So on the one hand, it will boost Kenya Revenue Authority's collections, but on the other hand, it will impede our manufacturing sector, because cost of energy will go higher as opposed to what we have now. And in fact, this doesn't apply only to Kenyan, but it applies to several other players in that industry as well. So I think it is a good thing for Kenya Revenue Authority, because they will collect this money, but it's not a very good thing for the manufacturing sector, Elijah.
Pretty much. It's a good point that you're actually clearing on that this is going to affect everybody in that sector. Ramogi, which begs me to ask you this question therefore, because, well, we do know the monopoly player, Kenya Power, is also in trouble. I mean, they're talking about the worst performance in 16 years. From what you said this morning, don't you think that, well, this really doesn't come at a good time, especially at a time when you're trying to spur proper investments? We're talking about last mile connections in the country. Maybe, from what you said this morning, Ramogi, maybe a Kenyan citizen and any other CEO in this sector would have told you, maybe not now for this sort of taxation they were talking about in the Finance Act 2020. 1 minute, if you may.
My friend, I'll need more than 1 minute, but I'll try. I think one of the things that I need to clarify,
yes,
is that Kenya produces more power than it needs. Mm-hmm. We produce around if last I checked, around 1.8 gigawatts, and we consume around just slightly above 900 gigawatts. In other words, there's a lot of power capacity that is not, so to speak, consumed.
Yes.
So when we give tax breaks for new power plants, what are we doing? Are we increasing capacity that is also going to be idle? The challenge and the reason why our power costs are very high is because of the independent power producers that produce power using petrol. And so for that reason, and they have very stringent contracts with Kenya Power. And so for that reason, then we find ourselves in a position where we are paying more power than we should.
Yes.
The cost of power should actually go very low. Now, when you have said that, is it a good time then to charge taxes? Yes, it is, because that segment or that sector is overpowered, or should I say overcapacitated. There's something that George has mentioned about transferring the costs to the final consumer. I'll be keen to watch how they do that, because in essence, the cost of that, the extra cost that they're going to incur is about 1.5 to 2%. And yes, they are supposed to transfer at most of that. If they transfer more than that, of course, nowadays we have options in solar. They are a monopoly, but they are not the only option. They should remember that. In terms of Kenya Power problems, my friend, those ones are man-made. Kenya Power problems are hugely managerial issues. That if we can just drain the swamp, as it were,
yes,
in the words of Donald Trump, I think we'll have a better management at Kenya Power. And no offense meant to anyone. I think there are awesome people at Kenya Power. I have some friends there. But man, the problem there is management.
Odemba Ramogi, let me just go back to you just before I let you go. Now, this is going to be exactly 25 seconds, though, because we're actually done this morning. Odemba Ramogi, yes, we do have the BBI report. Fantastic. I mean, tell me something about it. 25 seconds.
I love the idea of taking more resources to the counties.
Yes.
35%. Look, if I were to sit somewhere in the hearing of those gentlemen
Yes.
and ladies, if they are, I'd tell them, can you push it to 40% or 45%? I hate the idea of an imperial presidency because I hear that some of it is going to be, some of the powers are actually going to be increased. That makes me a bit jittery. I also hate the idea of a new prime minister because that means more costs and more people running around with the big man syndrome. But all in all, it's an interesting conversation to have.
Interesting conversation. Guess what? I'll be calling you back so we can actually talk about it as well with other TikToks as well. George, yes, I know you haven't cleared reading the report. It's been with you for some time now. I mean, we do have it. What would you like for the BBI to address? 25 seconds, if you may.
I think, Elijah, the challenge we've had, especially in the business environment,
yes,
is that we have we normally have only 3 years of actual production, and then the last 2 years to the elections we have problems, or 1 year after that you have problems. So if the BBI can cure this, then I think I'm a happy man. But give it to politicians. I think they always act in their interest, Elijah. That's the sad bit. Sometimes they package some of these things to look like they're in the interest of the common mwananchi, but largely it is to their interest. But if BBI can come in and assure us that we'll have peaceful election cycles year in, year out, then I think I'm happy. The rest we can deal with, Elijah.
Pretty much. George Ramogi, thank you very much for taking your time off your busy schedule to speak to us this morning, gentlemen.
Thank you, Simba. Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Simba.
2146 is your SMS line at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. We take a short break. Once we come back, let's talk matters, KRA, and auctioning. Do you know how your goods can get auctioned? What are some of the reasons, or what are some of the timelines that you have so as to avoid your goods getting auctioned? Once we come back shortly.